5 days of frost and my Kenora Mac B just keeps on blooming. I mean, there is no frost damage on it whatsoever. The leaves are fine. 5 days, 5 nights of frost. Every single one of them is still looking really good. If you live in a cold climate with a short growing season, grow Kenora Mac B. I mean, I cannot believe. I mean, look at the rest. There you go. There's the rest. It's all dead. Hi everyone, it's Evelyn. And before we get into the video of digging up the dahlias, I just want to dispel a myth that a lot of people have. You don't actually have to wait for frost to dig up your dahlias. What you need to do is have your dahlias growing for approximately 5 months outside. That gives the tubers enough, the new tubers, enough time to mature. Obviously the mother tuber is spent and you don't care about it anyway. The mother tuber is the original one that you planted. So it gives the new tubers time to grow to a good maximum size so that when you harvest them, you have good tubers for planting the following year. Now, if you live in a short growing season, you will always wait till the first frost because you're scrambling to get your 5 months of growing time outside anyway. But if you live, for instance, where I live, put my dahlias out in the ground May 1st. I've already pre-started them in my seed room. So in theory, I could start digging my dahlias up anytime, end of September, beginning of October. Now, here in Canada, we have Canadian Thanksgiving. So most flower farmers will continue selling flowers straight up to Canadian Thanksgiving unless they've been killed by a frost. And then a lot of them will start pulling up their tubers for dahlias and storing them if they have a lot. There's a number of dahlia farmers in the area that I live, and they have, 1,000 dahlias. They don't want to wait for the first frost to start digging them up because you never know when you're going to get a really hard freeze and then you can't work the ground. So most of them will start digging their dahlias up right after Canadian Thanksgiving, which is the second Monday in October. I quite often don't get my first frost until sometime in November, mid to late November. I've not had it till December 3rd one year. I was expecting that to be this year just because of how warm it's been. So the frost that we had kind of caught me off guard. Doesn't matter. The reason I dig mine up then is my dahlias have died, and that's basically the bulk of the flowers that I have left to sell, and there's no reason to leave them in the ground for new buds to form and sell because I won't have anything to sell until that happens. So I wait till the first frost because I'm selling flowers from my roadside flower wagon right up until that first killing frost. And then at that point, the flower wagon gets put away for the winter and the dahlias get cut down and I start harvesting them. So let's get into the harvesting. So this is the north bed, and I'm going to clean this bed all out first. I'm going to start on this end. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the twine that I used to corral the dahlias, and I'm going to wrap it up and store it for next year, because then I can cut it into sections and use it for bouquets, so it gets 2 good uses out of it. I'm going to start digging them up on this end so that I have a gap spot here. I can pile all the debris over here. And once I finish digging them up to this side, then I'm going to put a table here with a wash station so that the water can drain down this part of the property where there's good drainage. I have lots of containers from really big, like these are 2 foot by 2 foot. I have quite a few of them here. This is the new bed that I'm starting to compost. I've got all my hoses here that I can drag down there. I got 2 dogs chasing each other around the dahlia bed. Can't believe she's sitting in the shade on a frosty day. There they go. This is why putting in a new bed isn't going to get rid of their play area. They actually use the beds to chase each other around, and I'm getting totally distracted. But, this is just so much fun. Anyway. I've got smaller pots too, so that if I only have like 1 or 2 of a dahlia, they can go in a smaller pot. I've got more of these, and I'm going to store them in by type. So each basket or pot or whatever will get one type of dahlia, and then I'll put one label in it, and that's how I'm going to keep track of what they are until I start dividing them. The other thing I have is my map, and this is how I'm going to know what I'm digging up. So this is the first bed, and it says 5 Addison June, the first 4, and then the third one in line at the edge of the bed here. So that's how I know what I'm going to dig up. Those are going to be Addison June. The next 2 in the front and 5 at the back are going to be Purple Wave. The next 2 in the front will be Tartan. The next 2 in the front will be Thomas Edison, and all the rest will be Edinburgh, of which I had too many of. I had 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, 10. I don't need 10. When I do my containers that I'm going to dig them all up and put them in, I have flagging tape with their names on them. I'll just toss one of these into the appropriate bin, and I use the same tags every year. And this pot is that bed. The next pot is that bed. Then I got that bed. I've done both of these beds together, and then that one. So I've got all the tags according to bed, and that's how I'll keep track of them. I've got my loppers for cutting back the tops. I'm going to leave a good 6 inches as a handle. I've got scissors in case for the to get the twine off. And of course, I don't use a fork, a garden fork, or pitchfork rather. I just use a shovel. You can see there's frozen dirt on that still because it's still being cold out. I just use a garden shovel. I'm not going to buy a pitchfork just to dig up the dahlias. So I'm going to set you up, and you can watch me dig the first ones up, but I'm going to cut the twine first. The Addison June is a prolific tuber producer, but the tubers aren't that big. First thing I'm going to do is pull out this black picket that's in my way and cut the stuff back about 6 inches from the ground. That's 2 of them. Don't need this in here anymore. The little, these guys, I was using these just to help support them a bit. Okay, let's dig those up with my frozen dirt. Okay, this is where you leave the handle so that you know where it is that you just dug up. So I got one there. This is the other one. I'm going to keep the spade quite a distance away. I know the clumps aren't going to be that big, so I should be safe here. And I use the spade to help lift it out of the ground. I'm not gentle. I bang it to knock all the dirt off. And that's exactly what I was expecting. Small tubers, but very healthy tubers. So I'm just going to put that in there for now. Get this picket out of the way. And dig this one out. And that's what that one looks like. So I'm going to continue through this bed and then catch up with you when I've got this bed all dug and my watering station set up. So you'll notice in that clip how easily the soil came off the dahlia tubers. That's because we basically had frost through the night for 5 nights. and it hadn't rained prior to that. So the dahlias hadn't actually been watered for quite a while, at least a week anyway. So that's why the soil wasn't clumped hard onto the dahlia tubers. So when I dug them up, a lot of the soil just fell off of them. If the soil had been wetter, it would have been harder to knock the soil off. Okay, now let's get onto the washing station. The bed is cleaned out. I got all the debris down here on the ground. I've put the black pickets there. I've stacked up my little fencings there and there. Down at this end, I've kept it clean. I've put my little table. I've got my hose. I've got pruners. I got the first one out here, which I can tell what it is by looking at here. That's Thomas Edison. I had two. You can see it's not like a massive root or a tuber cluster, but there's 4 really healthy ones in there. And that's all you need. You don't need giant, massive tubers. They tend to get broken anyway. But anyway, so then I can just, where am I here? Hose that off. I'm not going to do all the hosing, that's just a minor demonstration. And then just cut off the stem and some of the roots and put it back in the pot. I have my Edinburgh here, which is clearly going to be the most because I had the most. Some of them have bigger tubers. Here I have my tartan, 2. I have a pail of my Addison June and a little pail of my Purple Flame. So that's how I'm going to do them. I'm going to wash them all, clean them up a bit, put them into my wheelbarrow there, and then take them down to what was my bouquet making station. And I'm not going to show you the process of all that, but that's what I'm up to now. Once I've done this bed, I'll do the next bed, and so forth and so on until I got them all done, which will probably take me 2 days unless I'm going super fast, which I don't plan on doing. Okay, I did want to actually show you what I cleaned up on the table here. So I left the tag inside the pot so it wouldn't blow away in the hose spray. So that's Thomas Edison. So you can see I cleaned up a lot of the roots after I washed it a bit, and broken tubers. So what I've got left for now is this, and I've cut the stem off too, which is like that. So this will make a much easier cleanup before I divide once I'm in my bouquet making station, and leave a lot of the debris here in the garden. Anything that wobbles around like this is broken, cut it off. If you see a tuber that has another tuber growing off of it, that's not going to have an eye. Cut it off. Cut off all your roots. They're just going to trap moisture and mildew and promote rot. Anything this thin, cut it off. This thin, not this thing. You want to have tubers. That's about, well, this one's coming off because it's floppy. But they say you want your tubers to be at least a finger's width apart, and that's what I go by. So anything that's thinner than this, I will cut off, such as this one, all of these little guys here. And then once you cut that all off, you can get rid of the extra mud. And there's my dog throwing her ball down the end of the table there. I'm not getting it. When you dig up a clump of tubers and you wash them, you will notice that one of them, in this case this one, will look darker and gnarlier than the rest. You can see it there. The others all look quite light, and that looks quite dark and gnarly. That is the original mother tuber that got planted. It's spent. There's no point in saving it. It will produce very, very little in the way of blooms. However, if you have no other tubers and that's the only one you have, you can save it and plant it. It may not produce much in the way of flowers, but the plant will get more tubers for the following year. So that is coming off. So there we go. I've cut it off. I just use this. I'm holding my phone with one hand, so I can't do it while I'm on the phone, but you can see where I've cut it off there. And then again, I'm just going to cut off all these little extra bits and pieces, the length of stem. And then that one will be good to go and dry and get ready for dividing. So that's what's left after I cut out the mother tuber. Actually, I should just cut this little piece here off, which I will. And all the little spindly stuff and all the skinny little tubers and the stem. That's what I've got left. So it's already quite a bit smaller and easier to manage. This is why you leave a good handle on your dahlias. So for example, I got my map here. And I'm doing the center bed here. And I'm going to take off this first outside row. I've already done the French Louis Mayer here. So by taking off the tops of all these, I can look down here and see the first 7 on the left are Spartacus, then 1 Penhill watermelon, and then 1 AC Loomis. So I've got the tops all taken off with, really good sized handles. But the importance of the handles is not the handle. It's so that I can see where they are, because I haven't removed the other rows yet. So I can now go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 Spartacus, dig those up. And then for some reason I have 3 more, which would be the Penhill watermelon and the AC Loomis. And whether that comes from there or is just a tuber that got left in the ground and decided to come up on its own, I don't know. I will discard it because I don't know what it is. So this is a good example of how different dahlias have different types of root balls. So this is the Spartacus. As you can see that it's got lots of small ones. I've just dug them up here. And now I've dug up the AC Loomis that was at the end. And look how different those tubers look. And of course you previously saw my Addison Junes, which were clumps of little tiny tubers. So I'm putting this over here in the AC Loomis row because I don't want it in with my Spartacus. So that's just a really good example of how different dahlia tubers look. Once this row is complete, well, it almost is, I'm going to cut the next row down, same as I did the first one, and then store them according to their type. So that was a pretty quick synopsis of how I dig up my dahlias and clean them and get them ready for dividing, which I will do down in my bouquet making station. I do a lot of the cleanup while I'm in the dahlia beds so that all that mess stays there rather than having to deal with it in my bouquet making station. So I ended up digging up all the dahlias over 2 days. The first day I dug up 63. The second day I dug up 83, which meant I had a total of 146 dahlias. I always thought I had 160, but that must be in the previous year because I used one of my concrete sunflower beds for dahlias last year too. So I had a total of 146 dahlias this year. As I said, 63 I dug up the first day, 83 the second day. But my days were not 8 hours, they were 4 hours each, because that is about as much as I can handle intensive work. Clearly, when I was in my 20s, I probably could have plowed through and done all 8 hours in one day. I'm not 20 anymore. I pace myself so that I know that I'm not going to be dead the next day. So if I can't do it all in one day, then I'm going to do it over 2 days, and I'm going to I basically split up the sections so that I could do it over 2 days relatively evenly. I didn't want to do exactly evenly because that meant I would go into an extra bed, etc. Could have, but I just didn't feel like it. Now, if you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions about the digging up process, leave them in the comment section. Leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to get back to you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. It does mean a whole lot to me. Also, if you don't know, I started an Etsy shop. The link to it will be in the description box below. And it is currently for my Birds in Santa Hat Christmas cards. There's 8 of them. I have the immature house finch, the mallard duck. I'm not going to say what the names are, I'm just going to say what the birds are. Orange-crowned warbler, robin, Rufous hummingbird, great blue heron, excuse me, seagulls, and dark-eyed juncos. For those of you who have bought my Christmas cards, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Any profits I make will go into my YouTube videos. They get mailed out in, I've grouped them together in 2 sets of 4, and they get mailed out in these Earth Hugger envelopes, side by side inside, and I cover the postage for sending them out, so the delivery is free. Now, let's get back to the video and let's get on to what I do to the dahlias once they're now down into the bouquet making station. I will say that I did not go and deal with them the next day. It was going to be a few days before I could get back to them. So I covered them up with drop sheets similar to what I did with my lettuce plants in the We Got Frost video, which was last week's. Just left them. They're fine because by being covered up, they can't dry out too much. And it was, I think, about 3 days later that I got back to the dahlias. So let's get back to them. Okay, I'm back in the bouquet making station. I actually paused the video for a bit to get ready for it. So what I have here is under this drop sheet are all the tubers that I dug up on the first day. This drop sheet is covering all the tubers that I dug up on the second day. I've got 2 paper bags full of paper bags. I've got some low-fat totes that after I do any dividing and spraying the cuts with the hydrogen peroxide, which I have, oh, I left it upstairs, I'll have to go get that. Then I can lay them out in individual areas to dry before I put them in the bags. And when I put them in the bags, I've got lots of these. These are fir wood flakes from my planers. You can see how light and fluffy they are here. So they make a really nice insulation for the tubers to be stored in. And let's uncover the first day's worth of tubers. They all look really, I'm going to have to put a light on. Hang on. I've got my wheelbarrow here that I can put all the empty pots in when I'm done. And then you can see, so these tubers have been sitting here for, let's pull this one up here, underneath there for 2 days, 3 days, because I harvested these day 1, I harvested these day 2, I took 2 days off, and now this is the next day. And you can see because they were covered up, they still, I mean, I can feel they're still damp. So if you can't get back to them for a few days, just cover them up. Anyway, I'm going to go get my hydrogen peroxide and then we can get to work. Okay, so I've got just a regular old spray bottle. It's been filled up with 4:1 hydrogen peroxide and water, 4 times water, 1 times food grade hydrogen peroxide. It's labeled as such so that there's no mistaking what it is. Put that down here. Here's my first tote. I'm not going to divide them all completely. I just want to divide them so that they're going to work inside. Which one's this one? Tartan. Inside the paper bags. Knock off some dirt. The stem still needs to get trimmed down. So I'm going to show you what, if I can see a really clear eye on here, what it looks like. Okay, I grabbed another pot to show you a clear eye, because there's no point in showing you one that's not that easy to clear and to see. This is marble ball. And if you look on here, first of all, when you look at the tuber and you follow its neck to the top, this whole round area bulge is where around the top of the, like the crown of the tuber, that's where the eye will be. Now, if I zoom in really close, hang on, I'm going to put this down on the table so I can focus in on that better. You can see around the crown. Can you see that? It's hard to see. That's the problem with videos, is it's always hard to show on camera. But anyway, it's right there. It's that little dark spot. It's like on the center of the crown, and that's an eye. I can see another one coming up right there where my thumb is on the crown of that second tuber. So what I would do for this one, for storing, is it's clearly got two different sections anyway. So it clearly can be divided through here. It basically tells you where to divide it. You can see there's a joining of those two tubers to the stem here. That's exactly where I will divide this one. And I will leave these as two pieces for winter storage. I could divide these two tubers separately, but the more mass you have, the less likely they are to dry out. So I will leave those two together and keep this clump as one as well. Put that back in here. Now back to, actually that went from there. Don't get your stuff mixed up. Now back to tartan. So if you look at this, if you wanted to divide it into two without seeing where the eye was, you can just look at it and you can look at where the crowns are. So here's a crown, and then you can see just the little indent here, and then that's where the crown for that one starts. So you could cut through there and divide those into two. I don't need to for the paper bag. I'll take the stem off a bit more. This one I do want to cut down. So what I would do is have a look at it first. Clearly I'm going to take the stem off, and then you can see this crown. I could just separate this one off here based on the top of its crown. But I can see that there's some clear and obvious divisions of areas, like that one. I would take that off, and then you come around here and you can see that this little section here is its own little clear and obvious section. I would take that off and then probably leave the rest. I don't necessarily worry too much about making sure I see an eye, because you can't see them all. And the reality is I start them indoors in February, so they start sprouting long before they get planted outside. And I have learned that whether I see an eye or not, there's usually an eye. I'm more interested in saving tubers that are nice and big and most likely to be able to hold up to the winter. I mean, you can see I've cut a lot of stuff off of here already back when I was digging them up and getting rid of what I didn't wanted, and that's because whatever tubers were out here were too skinny for me to save. I like to save the big plump ones. This one at its neck is almost borderline for me to save, but it'll be fine. So that's kind of what I do. So like if you look in this pot here, you can see I've cut a lot of stuff off that I don't want to save. That big chunk there was probably the mother tuber. They're all nice big tubers. Clearly that one's going to need to get divided down because it's too big and chunky. And yeah, you can see here, excuse me, on this one, nice big tubers. Clearly I've cut some stuff off the top that I don't want to save. Just keep the nice big healthy looking ones. All right, I'm going to start cutting. I can't do that. I didn't bring my little tripod down here with me, so I'm going to be going out for lunch at some point. When I come back down, I'll bring my tripod and then show you how I do the cutting. Okay, I went and got my phone. I mean, even though I'm only just on the second clump, because I want to show. These are my purple flames. I want to show you something. So here, you can't really tell where the eyes are. I mean, I know there's one there, and I know there's one there. You can't see that. But what you can tell is where the crown of the two tubers come together. So this is too big for putting in the paper bag with the wood chips on its own. But you can see right here where these two crowns come together. So that is exactly, I have to look and see what I'm doing without looking on the camera there. That is exactly where I'm going to cut. There, cut it to 2. Then I'm going to take my spray bottle of hydrogen peroxide and just spray that cut. And then I'm going to set it into its own little basket for the cut to dry a bit. Same with the other side. Now if you see a little bit of black there, I don't know if that just picked that up. Just cut that off. I think I just picked that up from the bottom of the thing. Then I'm going to spray that cut, set it aside. This one, I can do the same thing, but I don't have to, because it'll be small enough to fit inside the paper bag comfortably. So what I will do is I'm just going to cut this little neck back some more, because I don't need that. Spray that, put it aside. This one was in here by itself. It doesn't have anything that it needs done on it, but it does have a little gash in it there. So if there's a gash there, you want to make sure that there is no damage to the tuber inside. So you can just cut that off and say, I still don't like the way that looks, a bit too much. I'm going to cut a bit more of that off. Now that's all clean. That's fine. I can store that. That'll be perfectly fine. Just spray it and put it aside. So I've got all of them in this one little container for the cuts to dry a bit, and I will set that aside while I do the next one. Before I do the next one, I'm just going to take all the stuff that was in here and throw it into a garbage can. Grab the next pot of Dahlia's tubers, put it in here. These ones are Thomas Edison. Pull this out. Clearly I don't need this much stem. What did I do with the cutters? There they are. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut the stem off. I've got a little bit more tails that I want to cut off on here of roots, because I just find them annoying. Okay, so then I'm going to look on here. This is too big as well for it to store in the paper bag comfortably. So I'm going to look on here to see where I want to divide this. Like you can see a little bit of purple there. That's this new shoot starting to grow already. So clearly that's an eye, but that's beside the point. This piece here, I'm going to cut off. It's not, oh, it just fell off. I'm going to cut a bit more of that off because it's just a piece of stem with nothing attached to it. So this one's crown is here. This one's crown is here. They're all kind of intertwined. So I think, so this crown, you can just see a little indent there, ends here. This crown ends here. This is just stem. This is garbage. I'm going to cut through here. And I'm going to line it up where these two crowns divide and cut. If it takes me a few cuts, it's fine. And then it popped off on its own. So again, I'm going to get my hydrogen. Well, I might clean that up a bit with the scissors. This little piece is sticking out there. And cut some more of these little roots off here. Again, here's something that I don't necessarily like on there, so I'm going to tend to use my fingernails a lot. Okay, that looks better. That just peeled off, a little bit of dirt on there. Spray that. Put it into its own container to dry. This one that I just cut. Just gonna clean that edge up a bit. That's dead stuff there, because you can see that this doesn't attach to anything, so I can cut that off. Because you can see the crown on this one is here. and the crown on this one is here. I can take a bit more of that off, but I don't have to. I'm going to leave that just like that. Spray my cuts, put it aside, take out the next one. So I had more than 2 purple flames, but they probably had tubers that were really tiny, so I probably didn't keep them. Let's cut off all this stuff in here. Okay, so cut off more of this stuff. And again, you can see the crown of this one. You can see a nice big indent right here before the next crown starts. And you can see this crown is here, and this crown is over here. Now this, why I keep pointing out where the crown is, because everybody says cut where to keep your eyes. You don't have to cut where to keep your eyes. You have to cut to keep your crowns. Your crowns are what you need to keep. So whether you can see the eyes on here or not, like there's one eye there. I see just a little bulge there. There's an eye there. It's just a little bulge, but if you can't see it, until you get used to seeing it, just look for the crowns. Oh, by the way, see that? That's what happens when you cut through your finger with a pair of scissors. If you just can see where the crowns are, then you know where to cut for storage purposes. So where that little gap is, little indent is, where those 2 crowns were, that's where I'm going to cut this one. There. That one's done. Cut off a little bit of extra crap. Spray it. Put it aside. Pick this up. And other than a few little bits and pieces that I just want to trim off in here, that's fine just the way it is too, because I know that that will easily sit inside the paper bag and store for the winter. So spray that. Put it aside. Put my tag in with those ones and put them away. Okay, these ones are my Addison Junes. Those are the first clumps that you saw me dig up. What we have here is some interesting things. So this clump, too big, I don't want all this together, but you can see there's a stem here, and this stem has this tuber. This I should take off because it's broken and too small. It has this tuber, and this tuber. But if you look over here, you can see this tuber is on this stem by piece of stem by itself, and these 2 tubers are high up on the stem as well. So clearly, if I cut right here, I can divide those into 2 different sections. I mean, you can even see the air through there. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut that, and that was easy. Now I got 2 clumps. So let's look at this first clump and see what we got. Well, I know this is too small. That's not going to make it through the winter. I'm just going to get rid of that. Going to get rid of some of the stem. That neck is really, really tiny. I'm just going to cut that off. That little skinny neck will not make it. And all I've got left is this one little tiny tuber from that. Okay, I'm going to put that aside. The other side of it that I'm going to look at here now, as you can see, this is just, I'm going to say that neck is way too skinny. I'm not going to bother saving that. Cut off these little tendrils. Now, you can just cut, this is what I usually do, I just cut the tendrils off in one big chunk. That'll get sprayed. I'm going to look on here and see what else I don't want on here. This is looking pretty rotten, that piece of stem. This stem, I'm going to cut that off. Rotten stems usually cut off better with scissors. I don't want to have rotten stem on here. And that could be rotten from the frost. Let's see if I can cut that better with this. Yeah, I'll cut that off better than that. Cut the little end bits here. Okay. Now, you can actually see on here, it's the same thing. This piece of stem just has this one tuber on it. So I think I'm just going to separate that, making sure I keep all the crown. There. That's got all of its crown on there. And then these 3 tubers I'll keep together in a clump like that. I'll keep this piece of stem on here just to protect this tuber. Cut off a bit more of that stem. Then I'll just spray that. Oops. That's an interesting thing. Clearly I lost a piece of the end of this one. I'll just trim that off flatter. Spray that. Put that aside. Spray that. Sorry if I keep going off camera. I have to look at what I'm doing and look at the camera at the same time. Okay, so then this next clump, it's got all sorts of little stuff on here that I don't want. But I'm going to see if there's an easy place in here to cut first. So here's the stems. I'm going to just see if I can pull that off with my finger. Here's 2 stems. Now, you can see here that this tuber comes to here, and this tuber comes to here. I'm going to try and cut through here. If I lose a couple of tubers in between this one, if I lose a couple of tubers in the process, that's okay. There. So I cut through there a bit. 2 tubers fell off. This one's fine because you can see there it's got its crown. The other one does not, so I'm just going to cut the other one off because I lost its crown in the process of that little division. Cut off these, oops, phone's tipping, ah! Cut off all these little wonky things. Spray it, put it aside. This other one that fell off, oh, that's the one that I just cut off. That's toast. That's toast. So then we're going to look at this again and see if there's another place that I want to. I'm going to just cut some of this bits and pieces off. It might make it easier to see what I'm doing. There's still quite a bit of dirt in here. I don't want this tuber, it's too thin. Cut that off. Don't need this stem. Don't need this stem. Cut off all the little bits again that didn't get cut off the first day. Because they annoy me. Okay, so let's have a look here and see if there's an easy place to divide this. I mean, you can see where all the tubers line up into here. And if I get rid of this dirt, you can see that there's actually a gap in there. It's moving, and it's moving away from here, and this one's broken, so I don't care about that one. So I'm just going to go where it was moving and cut. Alright, so now on here I have 2 tubers. I'm going to spray that. If there was any mold on there, where I spray it, it would start bubbling because it does have hydrogen peroxide in it. Now, these 2 little guys, they're too small. They're not going to make it through the winter, so I will just cut those off. Consider this one done. And give it a good spray. And that one's done. This one's clearly got chopped with the shovel. Its stem, oh, it's even chopped there. Yeah, that one's toast. Got chopped up a bit too much. This one looks good. The reason they're getting wet is because the overspray of the hydrogen peroxide is hitting them and making them get muddy. This one feels loose, so I'm just going to break that off. And this one will store nicely just as is. So that one's done. So let's look at this one. This one's clearly loose. I'll break that off with my finger. This one's got a really skinny spot on that. This doesn't need to be in there. Okay, so we look on here. I'm going to just store this as is because it's nice and flat, so it'll sit in the bag fine. So that's all my Addison Junes. I had a bit more garbage coming off of this one, but a whole lot less than if I'd done it all in here. Okay, these are Petra's Wedding, and all their roots are going straight down. Well, actually, this one's could have gone straight sideways because there's where a stem was. There's another stem. It's difficult to know where to divide this, but one thing that's interesting about this is you can see on this one, you see those light spots there? Those are eyes. There's an eye. Let's see if I can do that where it focuses. There's an eye. But the other thing is all the roots are really thin, so I don't want to do much dividing on this because of how thin all the roots are. And if I got rid of all the thin ones on all the clumps, there'd be very few left. I mean, that one would be left. There's a few thick ones in here, like that one. See, my hands are getting all dirty, and that one. But most of them are pretty thin, so I'm going to save these as clumps the way they are. But because they grow, they can lie in a paper bag quite nicely. Some of them, oh, this one you can really see the eyes on. So you can see eyes, 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 growing eye. This guy wants to start growing again now that we're not in frosty temperatures. But some of these I can still divide in two. I see there's a stem there, and a stem there, and there's a gap here. So I can divide this into two by first cutting this stem a little shorter. And then I can actually get in between these two crowns, start my cut. Quite often I do my cuts in more than one cut just so that I don't do a whole lot of damage. Slide down a little further, making sure I'm not hitting any crowns. Cut some more, and now I should be able to just pull that apart. There we go. That's pulled apart now. I haven't ruined either of those two crowns. I'll cut this off a bit. And on the other one, same thing. I haven't ruined any of the crowns. It's just a matter of cleaning up these little pieces of stem that I left behind. Where's that other one here? Yeah, so I just want to get rid of that piece of stem. Pinched my skin between the scissors. Same thing here. You can see there's a clear division of two stems there. So, and look at that nice beautiful little eye starting to grow there. So I know that if I cut through here, that should be a really, really easy division. Oops. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start my, I'm going to start my cut. I don't want to hit that eye. I can see an eye right there. I don't want to hit that. So I'm going to start my cut there. Just did a little cut. Can I split it yet? No. I'm going to go to my scissors here, go in there. There we go. I cut and then I twisted. And now I got a little piece here and a bigger piece here where I cut that. So again, I'll clean up this piece of stem that I had on there. I don't need this little thing on there either. That one's good. I'm going to get in here. This is too thin. Cut that out of there. Get rid of some of the stem that's flaking out there. There's something in here I want off. There it is. And I can still see from this stem, there appears to be another really easy place to divide in here. So I'm going to get my cutters again, go into that hole, and you see there's the stem and here's all these roots here. I don't want, or tubers, I don't want to hit this tuber. This stem has these ones, so I'm only going to go as far as where I'm not going to hit anything. Cut that far, and it just divided on its own. So then, again, that one feels broken. Which one was that one? That one? It's moving around too much. Actually, they're okay. But I'm going to cut this piece of... I keep going off camera, sorry. I'm going to cut this piece of stem lore. I come to this one, cut that piece of stem off. Leave that. Now I'm going to look at this tuber mass and see if there's anywhere easy to divide on here. Not really, because it's all one stem, so I will leave that one alone. And then this one, let's see, I think I'll leave that one alone for now, but cut off more of this stem. I don't want it, like I said, I don't want to divide them too much because I don't want them to dry out. So I'm just going to go spray these all now and put them away. Okay, I've got all my, well, not all of them, but some of my tubers laid out here that I've gone and done the cleanup and the dividing on. All divided down just enough to sit inside a brown paper bag comfortably amidst wood chips. And each one has its label in it. You can see there's a label there, there's a label here. And then I've got my brown paper bag, which is just a shopping bag from our local Thrifty Foods. I've put in 2 containers of wood chips. I do 3. So I just use a yogurt container, dump it in there, and then, because these are all quite wet now from having sprayed them down with the hydrogen peroxide water mix, I'm just going to put them all in here for the night. You can see already how easily they're going to stack in here in layers from the size that I have put in here. Even this one, which is a long thin one, can easily go the length of that bag. But I'm just going to pile them all in here for overnight with the tag, because you can see that there's still how much water is even in down. Can you see that? Maybe that doesn't show up, but anyway, I'll put that aside. And I'm going to do that to all of these and just leave these overnight so that they can dry out a bit. It's a rainy day, so we have really, really high humidity. So I don't need to cover them. It's also not going to be frosting. So that'll stay like that. Put that one there. Already did some just a little bit earlier. They're all in here, just laid out, drying. And then tomorrow, I still have a few here that I have to go through and clean up and do the same thing with. But all the ones that I did today, that's the only garbage mess that I have. It's just barely covering the bottom of this garbage can. So way less by doing a lot of the cleanup out in the garden when I first dug them up. So the way I store the tubers is I took the ones out that I put in here overnight, and I'm just going to do one thin layer. I've done the 3 yogurt containers. Oops, dropping my phone over. I've done the 3 yogurt containers of wood chips. Now I'm just going to do one thin layer where they don't touch. And then I'm going to cover those with more wood chips. Still sticking up there a bit, but that's okay. I'm just not going to touch in that spot because I'm going to put some thinner ones in here around it. Smaller ones, thinner ones. And then do another layer of wood chips. And then put the rest of the tubers in there. And cover those up. All right, they're all covered up now, and I'm just going to close the bag down, put the name on the bag. These ones are Lindsay Michelle. Get out my packaging tape. Just make sure the name is stuck. And then just do a couple things down here so it'll hold. And that's what it'll look like. Okay, so if you're wondering why I do any dividing at all, if I'm worried about the tubers drying out over the winter and why I'm worried about them possibly drying out a bit, first of all, I don't have a proper place to store them. I store them in the lower level of our house, up towards the front of the house, where this lower level is actually almost completely below grade. So for that portion of the house, the temperature is regulated by the soil that is up against the house all around there, and that's basically in that far corner where the tubers get stored are. Now, because it's the temperature in that area is regulated by the soil, it's thermal temperature. And the soil seldom gets below 14 degrees Celsius, which means my seed room seldom gets below 14 degrees Celsius, and that's where I store them. That's a bit too warm, so that's why they can dry out over the winter a bit. Nothing to do with the paper bags or the wood chips. It has to do with the temperature of where they're stored. Now, I could store them in our garage, which is outside, and I tried to do that one year and soon realized that our winters, the humidity is so high, the paper bags were starting to get damp and the wood chips inside the paper bags were starting to get quite moist. Well, that's a recipe for rotting Dahlia tubers, so there's no way I can store them in an environment where the humidity is that high. So that's why I keep them in the lower level of our house, which at the front of the house is almost completely below grade. The back of the house, it's the opposite because we're on the slope. It's just walkout, not one step up, not one step down. It's just like right walkout. But where they are stored, that's, unless I put in a cool bot, I wouldn't be able to get the temperature low enough, and I'm not going to the expense for that because I know that they survive quite nicely. The little skinny tubers will dry out. I don't save those. Now, the other thing you might be wondering, what did I say? Why did I? Oh yeah, so why don't I store them in full clumps? And that's space. I don't have the space to store all those, what did I say, 146 tuber clumps in full mass. I don't have space for that. So the way I do them in the paper bags, I'll put a picture up here, you'll see that they store nicely on 4 Rubbermaid shelves. I've got the 2 shelving units, and I've got the 2 bottom layers with the bags of not just the Dahlia tubers, but there's one bag that has the anemone corms, and one bag that has the ranunculus octopus things. and that's a whole lot less space to take up than had I stored all the individual clumps, because all the big giant clumps, there's so much air around them, they take up so much more mass. Another question you might have is, I keep mentioning that I'm spraying them with hydrogen peroxide. Now, it's not the hydrogen peroxide that you go to your pharmacy or drugstore or whatever and buy. I order my hydrogen peroxide. I order food grade, which is really potent. You never want to use full strength. But I order it online through a place called Green Sprouts, which is a greenhouse supplier. When you get it, at that strength of hydrogen peroxide, it's a little dangerous. You have to handle it carefully. And what you have to do is dilute it. Now, we dilute it to 4 to 1. 4 parts water, 1 part hydrogen peroxide. And you'll notice I was getting it all over my hands, and my hands were fine. At that dilution, it's not dangerous at all. But if you want to use hydrogen peroxide and you want to get the food grade stuff, be aware that you need to learn how to handle it properly before you use it. So that's my little spiel on the hydrogen peroxide. So let's go over total amount of time. So as I mentioned, there was a total of 8 hours digging up, cutting down the tops, digging up the clumps, and then cleaning them up in my cleaning station. Then it took me 4 hours the first day of going through the Dahlia clumps and doing whatever dividing I wanted to do. And then the second day, I had some clumps left over, as you saw. I divided those, and then I bagged up all the Dahlia tubers in the paper bags and took them into my seed room and stored them on those shelves, and that all took an extra 3 hours. So that was 8 hours for the first 2 days of digging up, 7 hours for the other 2 days of dividing, bagging, and storing. So that was a total of 15 hours. I had 146 clumps in total. So that meant that I did 9.73 clumps per hour, which worked out to 6.17 minutes per clump from start to finish. So that gives you an idea of how much time it takes if you are going on a, I'm going to say a little bit of a speed, but you know, you watch me, I wasn't really moving that fast. I was just moving consistently, and I had a good system set up for doing it. So there wasn't a lot of moving back and forth into different areas, etc. So I was able to dig up, cut back a Dahlia stalk, dig up the clump, take it to my cleaning station, hose it down, cut off all the excess, put it in a container, take it to my bouquet making station, clean up any other little extra bits and pieces that I missed, divide it if I needed to, spray it with the hydrogen peroxide, get it stored in a paper bag, 6.17 minutes per in total. That's not bad. Now, again, if you haven't checked out my Etsy page, please click the link below. And if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed, do that. And we'll see you next week. Bye. I hope you enjoyed this video. Bye.